Welcome to the Millcreek Government Channel. I am Judy Zelina, and viewers, I have to tell you, I have been learning about some really interesting, and I have got to tell you, fun programs that are being put on through the Pennsylvania Sea Grant. And like I said, there are so many interesting environmental research programs and projects that they've been working on. And here to tell us, actually just about some of them, we don't have time for all of them. We'd be here a whole week, wouldn't we?
That's right.
Joining us is David Boughton, and David is a Maritime Education Specialist with Pennsylvania Sea Grant. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Judy. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
When we were talking earlier, and you were telling me about some of the projects, I, of course, had to do a little research, and
Okay.
I am here to tell you.
What'd you come up with?
I have found out I am the best person for this program because I know nothing about what we're going to be talking about, and I have a million questions.
We love fresh understudies. Bring it on. Okay. Let's talk.
First off, you had mentioned that this is Pennsylvania Sea Grant Regional Science Consortium. What exactly is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Pennsylvania Sea Grant and the Regional Science Consortium are two different organizations, but they work very much hand in hand. So first of all, Pennsylvania Sea Grant is a national program. It's federally funded through NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So what they do is any state with a navigable waterway receives federal funding, and that is paid to local universities, which in turn support salaries for individuals like myself to do education, research, and outreach. Those are the three functions of Pennsylvania Sea Grant. So we have our main office here, our Lake Erie office. We have another office in the Harrisburg area, and we also have an office down in the Delaware to cover the state of Pennsylvania and its waterways. So the Regional Science Consortium is, although we're both located at the Ridge Environmental Center, the Regional Science Consortium is in the research wing. So that's a locked facility. It's dedicated to providing facilities to do research, and I work very closely with that group, with Dr. Snarzer, who's the regional or the executive director there, and they have 19 different colleges, universities, and school districts that pay to utilize those state-of-the-art facilities. And they've got microscopy labs and fish studies, and they do the water testing as well for the beaches to make sure it's safe for the folks who head out to Presque Isle.
Okay, what is your position description in all of this?
Well, as I'm sure you probably have the same situation where we wear many hats. My official title is I'm a Maritime Education Specialist. Maritime, all things to do with the water and boats.
Okay,
depending on who you talk to, I guess. But I'm an educator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a certified science and history teacher, and I love meshing the two disciplines. I have my undergrad work from Penn State, and I got my master's through Notre Dame, and I've been working with Pennsylvania Sea Grant as their shipboard educator since 2006.
Okay.
So I am very keen on my job and know that I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity. And if I would have known they had positions like this long ago, I would have got started much earlier.
You've been working on a lot of projects.
Yes.
And we're going to just specifically talk about a couple of them and get a little bit more in detail, so I'll have to bring you back on the show to talk more.
Sure.
But tell our viewers, what are some of the projects that you've been working on?
Well, one of the things that I brought to our area of Lake Erie is drift buoys. And my philosophy on teaching is I'm a kinesthetic teacher. As children, students learn different ways. And I believe strongly in the hands-on approach to teaching. But I also realize that is very difficult to do in every discipline.
Okay.
So fortunately, I have science and history, which I do my utmost to have the students embrace. One of the things I brought to Lake Erie that is more of a international program is the drift buoys, which is a very interesting project because what we do is we have students build these buoys. They stand about 4 feet high, and it's basically a sea wing. And very little work has been done in the Great Lakes. Most of it is done offshore on the Atlantic and the Pacific. So this is basically a stick in the water with kite wings on it, with weighted at the bottom, and has a satellite transmitter on the top. So we'll have the students build these drift buoys, and then we'll either take them out in the research vessel or our own science boat. And we generally, each season, have dropped one off the Canadian border, on the Canadian side, at the border, and then closer to the American side. And then we watch them drift. So every morning we get up and with the students, they give them names like Betty and Bob and where's Betty this morning? And then we'll see, where have they drifted overnight? It gives us a fixed position of their drift pattern. And then we look at the weather conditions to see how that has influenced their track and consider the currents underneath the water and the currents on the surface of the water. So this, for example, was funded by the Great Lakes the Great Lakes Research Laboratory in Ann Arbor, and they used the data that came from these drift buoys over time to develop a currents map of Lake Erie, which was very interesting. And they found that there was a gyra in the center basin of Lake Erie, which hadn't been known before. That led to additional studies. That's something that's only seen in the Pacific, you know, the giant gyras.
And we've got one right in Lake Erie.
We do. It's seasonal, granted,
Okay.
but you know, it was a very interesting eye-opener, and it came a result of a student-built drift buoy that was let loose on Lake Erie. So that's one of the projects we worked on. The other thing that we've been doing and I always look for opportunities to collaborate. My philosophy is to take the research projects we're working on and turn them into educational opportunities for students. So the other one that I'm really excited about that we've teamed up with the intermediate unit out of Edinburgh, which is responsible for the 19 school districts in Northwest PA is.
Okay.
It started out as weather balloons, but they went so high, they got renamed to space balloons. So what we had students as young as 4th and 5th graders
All right.
build these payload containers, which were styrofoam coolers, basically.
All right.
And inside of it, we put a GoPro camera, an Arduino board, which is just loaded up with sensors like a photon sensor, barometric, pressure, temperature, a data collector within there, a GPS unit, and then above that, we had the students design a parachute, test it out off the 2nd floor of the Ridge Center, and a couple times off the tower when weather permitted. At the bottom, we have an FAA reflector, and then we have the large weather balloon. And then we do a launch. And I'm telling you, Jude, we did it at Iroquois recently, and it reminded me of the Wizard of Oz, as all the students surrounded the balloon, and they were all waving goodbye, and off it went, and it went to about 75,000 feet in the troposphere.
Really?
Okay, then it's designed, it pops at a
right.
certain level, then the parachute deploys, and then it floats down. And then we become the balloon chasers. We have to find. So the GPS transmitter, and we can actually predict within probably a 50-mile range where it's going to land based upon the wind speed and the wind direction at the time of the launch.
So you pretty much know where it's
have a good idea.
Okay, where it's going to be landing.
But it's still an adventure.
Okay.
And that's part of the fun, is finding it, retrieving that data, and then downloading it. And then we have the data to work with students to try to understand what happens between the surface of our Earth and as we move up through the air column. It's very interesting stuff.
Oh my gosh, is that cool?
Yeah.
That is really cool.
So that's one of them.
Okay.
Another one that we've done, and this is seasonally, we've done it in, this is part of a 5-year project, but we're also helping, working with the Sons of Lake Erie and the Fish and Boat Commission, and a number of different schools have helped. Central Tech has come down, and we've built fish habitats. They're called porcupine cribs, and each year we've been deploying about 20, 2 strings of 10, and the students come and they work with the, you know, the Sons of Lake Erie, who have a vested interest in fishing, and what it does, it's creating habitat areas out on, mostly in Presque Isle Bay, but also on Lake Erie,
All right.
where the fish have a safe place to spawn and be protected. And then, as a part of our science program, which I'll talk about here in a minute, you know, we like to go out and monitor that and see what type of fish are actually using it, what kind of activity goes on down there.
And I see the way they're built. They're built almost like a maze, crisscross and everything.
That's
so
right.
It's like twigs.
Well,
It would be like a natural habitat.
It has to be a fresh-cut hemlock.
Okay.
So it's still filled with sap and
All right.
it doesn't have float. We still have concrete blocks at the bottom. It's strapped together, nailed with a nailing gun, and then hoisted on a lift onto the boat, a specially made boat that the Fish and Boat Commission folks have.
Okay.
And it's taken out to designated sites, and it rolls off and goes down to the bottom, and there it sits.
Okay.
So that's been a fun project. So the one that keeps on giving. Also, you know, I did want to mention the weather buoy, and, you know, part of my association with the Regional Science Consortium, and I think the thing that a lot of folks have come to value is this offshore fixed buoy. It's about 2 miles off the Presque Isle Lighthouse.
All right.
And this is a buoy that came in. It's a very sophisticated buoy. that has done what people have always asked for around here. As you go around the point, people come from all over inland. They want to know, what are the conditions out on Lake Erie? Versus having to get in their boat, drive all that way, and get around Gull Point and find that it's too rough to be out. This buoy gives us a whole list of parameters for water quality, but in addition, it has a webcam on it, and it has a transducer which measures the wave height, which is what most boaters are very interested in. Wind speed gives us all that data. It can be downloaded on the smartphones and accessible to boaters, and give them a good idea as to what's around the corner. So as a part of that function, when I put on my captain's hat, and run the science boat, I go out once a week and we calibrate the equipment, and we take readings to make sure that the information that we're getting is up to date and on spot on. So
and those are the pictures that I can see when I go online.
Yes.
And I check the weather, and when they talk about the buoys, the shot from this buoy here, or they tell me where it's located.
Right. We have 3 buoys, 2 beach buoys, which are deployed just offshore. But the main buoy, the offshore buoy, is the one that will give the wave height and the wind conditions, and that's the one that a lot of people go to, and the webcam.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun too.
All right.
So, and then also, I was hoping we might talk about an arrangement we have with Gannon University, because Gannon maintains the only United States Coast Guard designated research vessel between Buffalo and Cleveland. And it's a home-built boat, and it's a 49-foot vessel.
All right.
It has a passenger capacity of 20, and it's been retrofitted. It has an enclosed chemistry lab. It has, a davit for doing research work. It's a work boat, and we've entered into an agreement with Gannon for. We've been helping to get students out on that boat for, I'd say, the last 5 or 6 years. It's one of the boats that we've focused on that's set up to do research, and the objective there is to provide opportunities, Judy. This is what this is all about, unique opportunities for students to play a role and actually be immersed in what could be a career for many people, and make the students the scientists for the day and go through the functions of collecting the data. We operate a Ponard dredge, which reaches down and picks up sediments. We bring up the sediments, we run them through sieves, we see what's living in there. We looked at the microscopic phytoplankton and zooplankton. We identify them. We deploy research equipment, the same type that the scientists use. We collect the data, we do weather observations, we do water chemistry, and we throw in some of our remotely operated vehicles and let the students operate those.
This is really exciting.
It's very exciting.
It really is.
Yes, so that's something that we do every year, and we've done over 10,000 students.
And this is the boat, it's the Environaut, it's called?
Yeah, research vessel Environaut from Gannon University, and we work with them to provide this opportunity. So,
now, I'd like to start talking about.
Oh, I know what you want to start talking about,
I
Judy,
do.
and I'm ready because I'm excited as you are about this. So let's not hold back.
I want to talk about the underwater robotics.
I know.
I don't care how old any of our viewers are out there. We all like robots.
You're right, and this seems to be more and more a thing of the future. Things are becoming automated. I look at it as, the way the world is turning. So.
Okay, and this is actually a program. This is a program through Sea Grant?
It is, and it's, I am attempting right now to regionalize it and provide this opportunity to other schools.
All right.
So, I'm working with it. I'm only one guy, and there's no one else that is doing this type of work in Northwest Pennsylvania that I'm aware of. And, I started about 7 years ago with this, and I ran into some folks at a conference in Boston, and it was one of those things, Judy, when I just knew that it was right. When I saw the drift buoys, I knew it was right. So I saw these robots, and I thought, what a great way to introduce and focus on STEM activities, which is the big buzzword in education right now: science, technology, engineering, and math. This morning I brought in one of the units that I wanted to share with you. This is a prototype ROV 107. This was made by 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and this started at the Maritime Center Charter School of Excellence, which is a part of the Perseus House. And for 3 years, we started fairly humbly, but we were producing about 30 smaller robots per year.
Okay.
And we would start after I got off the boat in October and continue through April. And I would do a robotics class. We did solar engineering, and this is what the focus was, building these. So we'd build about 30. I had a pair of students working on one unit. They'd start from scratch. So these were not kits that were ordered. I would buy bulk PVC pipe, hobby motors, mesh and the hardware, and stuff that you could typically find in a hardware store. Is this
your design?
No, this is the student's design, which I'm very proud to be able to bring this one in. The initial unit we have is called the Sea Perch, and the Sea Perch design has been around for probably 30 years. And it wasn't until MIT Sea Grant developed a construction manual which sourced the parts for these robots when it really started to take off. And as a result, seaperch.org came, and then they came out with the West Coast equivalent was the Marine Advanced Technology Education, based off the West Coast, and they do variations of this.
Okay.
But the idea is to be able to bring in reasonably priced and sourced robots that students can build. And then I look at it as what is at the other end. So building a robot is one thing, operating in it is another. And then what is the function of that robot? That's the exciting part. And we'll get to that.
I know.
So we built hundreds of these robots that are the Sea Perch. But as a student advanced in their years, I gave them the opportunity to tweak the designs. I wanted to bring in their sense of innovation and not dictate everything, but give them the opportunity to be inventive and be creative and consider things. So the frame gets built.
Okay.
And then on the smaller units, we actually have hobby motors, which are designed to operate on the land. They would have to be waterproofed to work underneath the water. So we'd have to wrap them up with electrical tape, place them in film containers with a 3-stage waxing so that they were coated in wax. The students would learn how to solder the connections, and then they would get to a point where they got to the control box, which is just, in this case, we have 3 thrusters, and these are 3 switches that operate the different thrusters. We have a port, starboard, and we have the vertical thruster. So many of the students became very proficient at building the robots, but it was a different set of students that became very adept at driving the robots. Because when it goes in the water, Judy, it's gone. Underneath the water, then you're operating off a monitor on the boat or from the shore, depending on where it's deployed. And you have to make that connection through your control box, viewing it through the monitor to navigate it through the water.
Wow, you're right. I mean, you don't see it once it's down there.
No, a lot of people like to come see them get deployed, but when they're in the water, you really can't see them. Now, we do start, so buoyancy testing on them is one of the key parts, because buoyancy within this water is key. So these tubes on the front are full of air. The rest of the tubes here are drilled so that water can go in, water can go out. They don't act as ballast. But there's a tipping point on the buoyancy, and we spend a lot of time studying that in the classroom, and have a huge tank, a buoyancy tank, where the students actually put them in, they adjust it, we get a balance beam, we get the optimal weight, sometimes putting beach rocks in, pieces of steel from tool and die shops, just to get that buoyancy just right. So it's just sinking, just floating, then it operates easier in the water. So then for this one here, we have lights on it. It has a depth capacity of about 40 feet, so it is somewhat limited. It's considered a remotely operated vehicle, which means it is tethered. So we have a tether line here where we run the video feed and the power. It's powered by a 12-volt battery.
All right.
So these robotic units, the smaller Sea Perch, in bulk cost about $130 in parts.
All right.
Whereas this, because it has a camera on it, would be about a $225 unit. Now, a bottom line, research grade underwater commercially built robot starts at about $15,000, which puts it far and away out of the reach of public schools to initiate the construction of that kind of unit. So to me, to be able to have students, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and just recently we've done it at the Union City schools, at their STEM academy with 4th and 5th graders. So
really,
I love folks that'll say, "Oh no, they can't do that. They're too young. They can't learn." Well, if they're given the opportunity,
they can,
and the instruction, it can be done, and it makes them feel good about themselves and can steer people into careers. So, so it's been a very exciting endeavor. So right now, although it started at the Maritime Center, and I've taught summer workshops at the Ridge Center through the Penn State College for Kids program, I realize I have a limited capacity. I'd like to regionalize it, Northwest Pennsylvania, make it available, you know, to all school districts or those that are willing to do it. So, you know, we're making an attempt right now to seek sponsors for various school districts that may be willing to either offer their expertise. You know, we have, you know, great manufacturing, you know, expertise here in Erie. And we have people that do this as a part of their employment. And we're hoping to, you know, create partnerships and collaborations to assist with the school. You know, with all the STEM talk, Judy, there's not, you know, there's a lot of support for STEM, but it requires money to buy parts to do stuff like that. So it's not easy to come by. And instead of going after, you know, grants, I'd like to see some local support for this. So this is one of my hopes from discussing this with you today. You know, and we're trying to initiate through the Regional Science Consortium and Pennsylvania Sea Grant.
Okay. This is so interesting, and I cannot believe that the students designed this and built this.
Yes, I'm very proud of them, and they were very proud of it themselves. So.
Okay, now I do want to talk a bit about, we were talking about the, you and I were talking, we were going to discuss the Pennsylvania Archaeological Shipwreck Survey Team, which of course is initials because we know government loves to use initials, which is PASST.
Oh yes, and isn't that a wonderful acronym?
Yes.
Because we're talking about the past, right? And I'm looking at the future. So, you know, that's history, science, we're pushing it together, right?
See, I'm learning.
Okay,
I'm
working with you.
I'm with you,
I
Dave.
hear you, Judy. So, yes, that's a very exciting thing. And actually, one of the reasons I left, you know, full-time teaching robotics is because we did receive some initial grant funding through the Coastal Zone Management Program. Now, they're responsible for Pennsylvania shoreline, which we have, you know, 76 odd miles in this quadrangle part of Pennsylvania. We don't have a lot, but we want to take good care of it, you know. And what they are currently doing right now is called a marine spatial survey. So they have boats out for the last 2 summers, and they've been running side scan sonar. And they're trying to survey the bathymetry underneath the water within our section of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Well, what a lot of people don't know, Judy, is that Lake Erie has more shipwrecks than any other freshwater lake in the world.
That is amazing, amazing.
It was because of the westward migration. From a historical standpoint, you know, it was easier to go by water than by land at that time because it was somewhat uncivilized, and they went in everything that floated. So an enormous amount of westward migration of human beings and settlers came across Lake Erie. So what we know is there's about 132 known wrecks within our section of Pennsylvania. So the first stage of the purpose of the past organization, which by the way is based out of the Regional Science Consortium. It's composed of historians, researchers. We're working with the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission, Coastal Zone Management. We've got some of the local boat operators, some tech source folks involved, and also the folks down at the Maritime Museum. They are all stakeholders in this idea of taking what Coastal Zone is doing. So when they go out and say they hit what we call an anomaly in the water, then we get our crosshairs, X marks a spot. Then PAST kicks into gear, we send down the robots, we do a survey, and if it's an interesting you know, wreck, then we send in our dive team, we put our historians to work, and then the idea is to publish this information, make it available so people can understand our maritime heritage from this area.
So these robots are actually going down, they're going to tip you off whether it's something you want to do more research on, a shipwreck?
Right, because sonar only reach is the surface of the bottom. Okay, now these robots, my intention is to advance the robotics to the point where we have more sophisticated units that can give us good video feed and do mosaics of the wrecks and do complete surveys, inventory, ship history, and be able to post this on the web as another resource for students to understand, you know, that part of Lake Erie. So that's in the out years. We're going after the undiscovered wrecks, the sub-bottom profilers, the older wrecks that are buried within the sediments that have not been discovered yet.
Okay.
So it's very exciting, and it's a very hands-off approach, Judy. So we're just surveying. We're not looking for buried treasure here. You know, a lot of these ships are, you know, maritime grave sites as far as we're concerned. So we just want to identify them and create an inventory of the shipwrecks in Lake Erie is the objective.
Okay, because there's so many that we do know right now. That is so interesting. What I think, and I'll tell you what I really, really like about this whole project is that you're actually having students involved.
Yes.
Because a lot of these students maybe aren't aware of any of the shipwrecks,
Right.
or even how to build a robot. But look at the end result. They're a whole part of this exploration.
It's about creating opportunities for people,
really
Judy.
is. It truly is.
And on the boat, sometimes we get students who've never been in Lake Erie and they live blocks from the waterfront. It just amazes me. It's a life-changing experience to expose people to these kind of opportunities. And I'm proud to be a part of it.
Now, I know, Dave, you were talking about getting other schools involved
Yes.
throughout Erie County. How would they get a hold of you if someone was interested, or if they had more questions
Yes.
on this? Is it just middle school? You were talking like 5th, 6th, and 7th graders?
Well, on the boat, we have students that are 7th grade, 12 years,
Okay.
up through, we do the freshman and sophomore in college as well.
All right.
So we generally do the K through 12 schools in that small spring area, and then in the fall, and we do research during the summer. This is based on our contractual arrangement with Gannon on the Environaut. And we run our own science boat, which we don't take students out. So if we're doing the drift buoys, the fish habitat restoration, weather balloons has been coordinated through the intermediate unit.
Okay.
So that's a point of contact there.
Okay.
But for most of the other things, we can be contacted through our webpage, pacgrant.org. So, and of course, I can provide my email contact and phone number for you if you'd like to share that with your viewers. So,
Okay.
we do want to get people involved, and our focus has been talking about these underwater robots and getting students engaged into these STEM activities and making this a part of their learning environment at school, so they can explore and go beyond.
Dave, it is so wonderful having you on this program. I've learned so much, and you know what? You have to come back, because these were just two of the
Yes.
of the projects that you're working on, and you've got so many more things going. We can talk about the space balloons and.
I'm going to have to take
how
you
when
out
they
for a
fall-
boat ride,
what-
Judy. This is what I'm thinking.
All right, I'm
Okay,
going.
Okay,
I'm there.
you're on.
I'm with you. Dave, thank you so much. And again, viewers, if you have any questions, any teachers that you think would be interested in bringing their students on board with this program, give Dave a call, email him. He would love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to the Millcreek Government Channel. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.